And now, weighing in out of the blue corner, Josh the Punk Thompson. 100% agree. And on the other mic, he weighs in from the red corner, Big John McCarthy.
Oh, that's right. It is the Weighing In podcast, and my man Josh Thompson and I have so much to talk about. We're going to be talking about the big-time UFC 285 coming up with the first appearance of Jon Jones as a heavyweight. First appearance in almost 3 years for Jon Jones. Going against Cyril Gane, that's going to be an epic fight. Could be a whole game changer in the way people look at things. But we're going to talk about that, and we are going to have a special guest coming on a little bit later to talk to us about certain things that are important in MMA. So, my man Josh, what are you doing, baby? That's a beautiful shirt you're wearing. Because, and still, that's right, babe. Go ahead, flex.
Hashtag and still, baby. Hashtag
dude, flex,
and
would you
still.
please?
I tried. That's it.
Oh,
that's all you get. That's all you get from me, buddy. That's it. Yeah, I mean, I'm pumped, and we're gonna have a great conversation and with someone, a special guest later on, and I'm pumped for that. And then on top of all this, John, this is the big card coming up. This is the chance.
Huge.
This is the chance for Jon Jones to, I guess, kind of solidify himself as potentially the greatest fighter of all time.
That's right.
Now, I know that he's had things in the past. People keep talking. I have a question, though. What exactly did the commission change? What exactly did USADA change that said that whatever it is that he had in his system just wasn't enough? And that those kind of things now, like that he had in his system, that would not be considered cheating now?
Well, no, he had what was called, they were trying to measure it out as picograms, but he had picograms of certain metabolites that are known to be metabolites you get from specific steroids that he had in his system. And at the time, the number of units that were being presented in his urine sample or blood sample at the time was enough to say that, you know what, you are violating what USADA was. Those numbers have now been changed based upon USADA, other people wanting those things changed as far as the numbers. And now Jon is sitting there saying, I have been vindicated that I did not take anything. And as much as I really don't care about the whole thing now, no, he wasn't vindicated. No. You know, he got caught. Now it's a different, it's like saying Nick Diaz got caught with marijuana in Nevada when he fought Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva got caught with some type of blue liquid that he got from Thailand or whatever it ended up being. And then Nick Diaz, they almost tried to give him a lifetime suspension for marijuana. Jeez. Well, now the levels are different as far as what they allow in the state of Nevada. So the levels that he was at, he might not even have been, put in a place where he could have been suspended. But at the time, with the nanograms that they had, he got caught for, having marijuana in his, a marijuana metabolite in his system. It doesn't mean he didn't do it. It just means that now the amount that he had, maybe it wouldn't be illegal.
Yeah, but I look at marijuana as not performance enhancing.
I don't think so either. I absolutely don't. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't even want to get on more to that, but I just wanted I didn't know what the rule change was. I didn't know. I didn't read up on it, and I just heard all this stuff that people were talking. And I saw Jon had written something saying that he was basically vindicated that.
No, sorry. If you want to, believe it, go ahead. But no, it doesn't vindicate him. He took it. Okay.
Yeah, at some point in time, he had taken some sort of performance-enhancing drug, and that's But all of those things aside, we have never. I don't think anyone's ever questioned his talent.
Oh, come on! Anyone that questions his talent or his fight IQ or the way he could absolutely change a fight at any time, the guy he's special. He is special. There's never been anyone it's because it's a combination. In my opinion, it's a combination, Josh, because a lot of guys. I know a lot of guys. They're just God-given talent. God made them a certain way. They had speed. They had the ability to have power. They had all these things going for them, but they always lacked somewhere. You know, mentality-wise, they just weren't mentally strong or whatever it was.
Work ethic.
Work ethic. Look, and let's be honest. You know, as far as fight IQ, tell me he doesn't have a good fight IQ.
Brilliant. Tell
me he doesn't have physical attributes that nobody else had at 205. And, you know, it might be a little bit different now at heavyweight, but
yeah,
an 84-inch reach. Stefan Struve was 7 foot tall and had an 81-inch reach. Okay? I mean, there's just certain things about him. He had just physical attributes that you look and you go, wow. You know, incredibly. He's very strong, even though, you know, a lot of people don't give him credit for it. Physically, he's very strong. You know, he's got long levers that makes it to where he can do things. He's a good wrestler. He's got good stand-up. He's slick with his stand-up at times. May not have the biggest power. We're going to see if it translates to heavyweight because, you know, Dan Cormier didn't have the greatest power as a light heavyweight, but he had really good power as a heavyweight. It just translated better for him. We're going to see if that happens for Jon. There's no doubt, you know, what he's done in MMA is incredible. I mean, I want to say what is it they said? I saw a number. It was either his last 12 years. The only thing he's fought is championship fights.
Yeah.
It's fucking amazing.
Do we not give Chris Cyborg the same amount of credit? I mean, she for years was undefeated, or not undefeated, but like for years, all she did was fight championship fights.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and
is she not considered one of the best female fighters of all time?
Is. No, she absolutely is. I mean, I'm just simply saying, like, they both got caught up in.
They both got caught.
Yeah, they both got caught.
Both made a mistake.
Both extremely talented. I think one in the female division is one of the most dominant female fighters, if not the most dominant ever. And then Jon Jones being probably the most dominant in the male division. I mean, I'm not trying to compare the two in terms of longevity and that, but I look at Khabib being the most dominant fighter in the cage. Jon being, I don't even know how to put it. Like he wasn't the most dominant, but he had won.
Not throughout all of his fights.
No, not throughout all of his fights. And we found that mainly at the end of his career.
Well, and a lot of it, you take a look and, you know, how many times do we talk about it, Josh? As a champion, it's tough to get up every time because you've got that target on your back. It's hard for you to take that target and find something that actually gets you excited. Because your promotion is always going in, okay, this is the next one. Here's your next one. Here's your next one. And it doesn't mean that you're excited to fight that person. There could be, you know, someone out there that you go, yeah, that really excites me. And you get up for it. But most of them, you're like, yeah, I could care less, really. I don't think he's as good as me. And so as soon as you start saying, he doesn't present a lot of problems for me. Well, where's your motivation come from? So that makes it difficult. Yeah. And again, that goes back to what I just said. 12 years of championship fights.
That's a long time.
Fuck yes.
You know, and you look at the guys that he has had to fight along the way. I mean, some of them being legends, you know, Shogun Hua, Machida, you know, you got the list of fighters that are just.
See, and I think all those guys, when you're talking, he obviously won the title from Shogun, but the Lyoto Machida fight, I think that got him excited. Yeah. I think that was one that he trained his ass off for, and he was excited about fighting someone like Lyoto Machida.
Well, he lost that first round against him.
Yeah.
Lyoto did what Lyoto does and flustered the shit out of him. Finally, Jon grabbed him and said, "Come here, son."
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Pressed him to the fence and said, "Give me that."
He hit him with a shot, and Lyoto went, "Uh-oh."
Yeah.
That hurt, and then it was downhill from there. But, I mean, there's no matter what anyone says, you know, it comes up. He's got a record of 26-1. He didn't lose that fight. You know, that was done poorly as far as the regulatory, you know, body did not handle that from the official to the commission. They didn't handle that right because Matt Hamill, who he has that loss against, yes, if you want to say that Jon fouled him, okay. But that fight stopped based upon a separated shoulder. by Matt Hamill. It wasn't because he was hurt by the elbow, the illegal elbow that was called. That had nothing to do with why Matt Hamill couldn't go on in the fight. He had a separated shoulder from Jon Jones throwing him on his goddamn ass, with a takedown, and he separated his shoulder from it, and that's why the fight could. So that was a legally done technique that caused an injury that made it to where, I can't go on because my shoulder's separated. Okay, but I'm not going to DQ somebody because it wasn't the blows that he threw. If you want to say they were illegal, that's not what stopped the fight. So it's just ridiculous, loss.
Are we at an era now though where most people feel that unless you have held 2 titles in different weight classes that you're not considered the greatest of all time?
Well, I think that you have it's like judging a fight. We talk about power or we talk about volume. And you take a look at Jon Jones. Well, obviously, volume-wise, no one has had more championship fights than him. Mm-hmm. So he's got that in the bag. But if you're going to take a look and say, Georges St-Pierre has 2 championships in different weight classes. Mm-hmm. He's got the welterweight. He's got the middleweight. All right. So that kind of separates him in the fact that he was willing to move weight classes and was successful in doing so. Yeah. That's what Jon's doing now. He's attempting to move weight classes. I give him credit for the way that he's done it. He's taken his time. He hasn't rushed into it. And I do think that there's going to be people, if he loses, there will people that say, he's not, he's not the best fighter ever. I'm not too sure that I agree with that. You got to take a look at, his body of work and everything. And you got to say, overall, with the amount of championship fights and what he's done, it's hard to name someone better.
If we're putting them all into one category, if we're putting the ones that have been busted, the ones that are not been busted, the ones, and you put them all into one, just say fighters, period. Yeah, I'd be hard pressed not to say he's not the best.
If you want to put an asterisk, the Roger Maris asterisk of, Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs in 154 games, and it took Maris, 162 to beat it. Okay, put the asterisk. I don't care. But if you're going to just take a look and say fighter, it's hard. You're hard pressed to find someone ever better.
John, do you think I look at Jon Jones in a bunch of different ways.
That's because he's worn a whole lot of different hats and different characters.
That's the problem. That is really the problem. And I think Francis Ngannou, I just read a tweet or a comment that he had made saying Jon is got multiple personalities. It's like, which one is he going to be today?
Each one of them can fight, though.
Yeah, he's going to be the world class. He's going to be the world class fighter. Is he going to be the person, wrecking his car? Is he going to be whatever else? But at the end of the day, he is hands down probably the best fighter that's ever stepped foot in the cage.
Yeah.
Does it not bother you though, just to see somebody that has so much God-given talent and could have been
squander a lot of it?
Well, did he squander any of it? He could have
done this is where he squandered. I'm not saying achievement wise. Look, he's done it all. He's got the ability to win the heavyweight championship, but still achievement wise and who he fought throughout time and the way he did things, he's done all that. But you cannot sit there and tell me that years from now, he, you, me, are all not going to sit there and say what could have been also. Even though as great as he was, think of the time that was squandered. Because if there's one thing, I talk about all the time, I've talked about it, there's nothing more precious than time. Mm-hmm. And it's so valuable. And you learn that especially once it's gone because you can't get it back. And so 3 years of time, 3 years, with, 2 years with the suspensions, things like that. How much time was squandered? How much more could Jon possibly have accomplished if that time wasn't, used the way it ended up being used?
I don't know if he could have accomplished much more in the sport, but he could have accomplished a lot more outside of the cage, whether it being a role model for the youth in whatever area he wanted to devote his time to. Could have been a lot more in terms of helping to build projects within their community, within his community. He could have done a lot of things, but I think once the reputation started to fold, all of those things dried up, and it's deservedly so. But I'm simply saying that guys like GSP, their reputation lingers on because of the personality, because of the things that just the way he presents himself.
Because the way he handled himself.
The way he handles himself.
Yeah.
And Jon, he could have had all of that and probably more.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, movies in Hollywood and things like that, I feel like they don't touch him because of the past that he's had. And he could have been that next. He could have been somebody like, I don't want to say The Rock, but I'm simply saying he could have been given opportunities like The Rock to be able to shine and do more and develop more and bring in more that he could potentially do even more good throughout his communities. And it's sad because I look at him, and when he was young, and there was a video of me warming up with Habib, and it was relatively young. It was when Habib fought Pat Healy. I believe we were in Chicago. And man, Jon's back there. He's watching Habib warm up and everything, and I see that's like a young Jon,
Yeah.
and Jon, and I look at him, I'm like, man. And back then I was like, wow, he's good. He's really good. I was a real fan. And then as I started seeing him have meltdowns, I tried to hang on as long as I could because I was a fan of him. I was a real fan. I was like, this kid he's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then as you start seeing the meltdowns that he had, I was like, man, you're digging yourself even deeper and you're losing people that really are trying to hold on to you. And me being one of them. And that was, and I want people to understand how difficult that was for me because I came from AKA. There was no love lost for that guy at that gym, but I was a fan. I was a fan of him. And
how can you not be? If you're talking pure fighting.
Yeah, that's all I was
talking. If you're not a fan of Jon Jones, just pure fighting, you're not a fan of fighting.
Yeah. But when you look at him and Cyril Gahn and the 3 years away, and the things that Cyril Gahn possesses, the abilities that he possesses, and Jon, the size difference is not as big of a factor as it was for the guys he had to fight in the 205-pound division.
Not going to be a difference.
I look at the wrestling. Sure, he's got a huge wrestling advantage, but with the weight being put on, will he have the cardio advantage that he used to have also? He was someone that could really slow the pace down in a fight because people had to respect his reach, his range, his ability to stiff arm you like a child. He won't have that ability against someone like Cyril Gahn. He still has the wrestling, but does he have the wrestling to wrestle 5 rounds and continue to get the takedowns? I've said this for the longest time. No one's better than Jon at keeping you at bay and making you fight his pace. I also believe this, no one's better than him outside of him and Habib, but in different ways, at the dominant control from the top position and the nastiness of the ground and pound. Habib would lock your legs down and just hold you there and talk to you and make you pay until you were willing to just give up a submission or, basically just the ref would stop it.
Pray for the referee.
Jon has got that nastiness about him with the elbows and the striking and the top pressure and
He's
control.
got a hell of a ground and pound, yeah.
It's one of the best in the game I've ever seen in my life, hands down. And I don't know, this fight may not go the distance, but I take those attributes that Jon has, that he had at 205. Will they translate, Jon? Do you think they will at heavyweight?
I think the part that I look at that I think is going to transfer, it can't change, is the fact that at 205, Jon Jones, he out-wrestled Dan Cormier. Mm-hmm. Okay, and Josh, people don't seem to understand what that said when that occurred.
Yeah.
Because Dan Cormier is as good a wrestler as you will ever find.
In our sport.
All right. What's that?
in our sport. In MMA.
Exactly. I mean, this is a guy that did it. Oklahoma State. Yes, he lost to Cale Sanderson, in the NC2A finals and stuff. But that was the best NC2A wrestler of all time. All right, and that's who he was losing to. Then he continues on and he wins worlds and he does all these things and he gets on the Olympic team and all this stuff. The dude can wrestle.
Two-time Olympian. Olympian.
And Jon Jones out-wrestled him. In fact, in the first fight, it was so clear that at a certain point, Dan wasn't trying to win the fight anymore. He was trying to get back a takedown because he had been taken down multiple times by Jon, and it was just he had to show that I could take Jon down. And it was apparent that I can't beat him, but I'm going to at least try to take him down. And he had a hard time doing it. He got, he picked him up and he tossed him and Jon was right back up.
Yeah.
And he has, in my opinion, such an advantage in the wrestling department against Cyril because, Cyril will try to take people down at times, but look, his wrestling is not that advanced. It's not that clean. It's not that crisp and good. Jon's going to outclass him there. And if Jon gets in the top position against Gon, I think it's over. He is going to have, unless he has just very little time to work in that round that he gets the takedown, he's going to do damage because I say it all the time. As a heavyweight, you cannot be underneath your opponent. You have got to move. You've got to get out because there's too much weight, too much damage comes with, the velocity of the shots. You can't take it for very long. And so I just look at it and it's like in the stand-up, I think Cyril Gane can give him problems. I think he's got a lot of good movement. He's in and out. He's difficult to touch at times. Jon's going to have some issues as far as he doesn't have that big reach advantage that he normally goes into a fight with. It's going to be more neutral. And so in the stand-up, I think Cyril Gane can definitely, be with Jon for a lot of the fight. Not when it comes down to the wrestling and getting on the ground.
I just wonder if his cardio is going to translate. Because like I said, he's not someone that has really been known to set a super fast pace. And the fighters that he's had some issues with, guys that were his size and guys that were willing to go ahead and try and set that faster pace. Gus in the first fight, Dominic Reyes in their fight, guys that were able to try to set a pace that he just didn't, he
wasn't comfortable with.
He wasn't comfortable with.
Yeah.
Now, Cyril Gane, he has conditioning, he has cardio, he's got size, he's got the ability to use the lateral movement and strike off of his lateral movement. The next thing is, for me, does Jon Chin hold up at the heavyweight division? These guys can crack, man. They can swat. They've got power.
Yeah.
These guys have got all of those attributes to really put it on him. And Gus was not known for his power.
No.
And when he touched Jon a couple times, you saw Jon go, "Oh shit, you got me. You got me." And so I look at guys like Cyril Gane, who, if he gets there with the speed and the ability to touch him, and not being touched for 3 years makes a big difference also.
Here's what it does. But here's my question to you. Name me the guy that put Jon on his ass.
I can't.
No
I don't know if he's ever been there.
He does have a chin.
Yeah.
He's got a good chin. And really the thing that I look at, I think his chin is going to be just fine. Because obviously you get hit with a big shot up there, you could be put out just like anybody. But it is the question of Cyril Gane has fought at heavyweight. He has fought at whatever weight he's going to be coming in at, and he has fought 5 rounds at that weight. It is going to be different for Jon to come in and fight those 5 rounds, especially if Cyril Gane doesn't allow him to just control the pace and make it a comfortable fight for him, because he's never fought there and he is carrying a lot more weight. He's going to be, as you carry weight, it's just different when you talk about the actual fight. It's different than training because the speed's going to be different. The pace is a little bit different. Just the pressure of everything that's going on creates a bit of an anxiety, which tends to get you a little bit tired. All of those elements, I think, the thing that I have the most, not doubt, but wonder about is how well, and not how well trained is he. I know he's well trained, but how does he do in recovering when he does get tired?
I'm going to throw a little wrench in here because of the time and how long he's been out. I want people to remember that calf kicks were not really that prevalent when he left. And that could be definitely a big game changer. They were just coming about when he left the sport. I mean, he was 3 years ago. They were just kind of making a little bit of a wave, and he kind of was inactive, even though he has been at it for 3 years. If Cyril Gahn goes to that calf, John's got those long, skinny legs, by the way.
He's got skinny legs, yeah. Well, skinny calves.
And if Gahn gets to that calf kick early, and I know John likes to switch, so that he'll have to, I think Gahn will have to actually switch as well with him to open up on the other calf. But we saw with Logan Storley, and he even said it himself, after 2 calf kicks, I was a different fighter, completely different fighter. And you saw it. And I've seen other fighters that after 2 calf kicks, or even just 1, they start thinking about switching stance, or they just don't push off as well as they used to. And John's going to need to wrestle a little bit. John's going to be able to use his distance and his range, but he's going to have to wrestle in this fight. He's not just going to stand the whole time. I don't believe he is.
I think his game plan is to use his wrestling. It's got to be.
Yeah. But you start hitting that calf early, I think it starts changing the way John has to fight. And that makes the fight a little bit more interesting. John's good on the feet. I have no doubt John could probably beat him on the feet as well, because John could beat almost anyone anywhere. But when I look at this fight, you start attacking that calf, and he switches stance. You attack the other calf. You're going to have to attack both calves because John's switches stances so many times, and he can do it from both sides.
Yep.
But then that takes away a little bit of that wrestling, not being able to push off, not being able to lean against you and push.
And everyone has their preferred side to shoot.
Yep.
As far as I want my right leg forward, a lot of guys want their left legs forward, but it's just everyone's got the way that they feel comfortable with it.
That's something to keep an eye out though when you're watching this fight. Is does Gahn go to the calf and try to change the way that Jon Jones can wrestle, because that will make a difference.
Good.
So, but if you're looking at this fight, John, how do you really, in reality, let's just say all that stuff aside, how do you see this fight going?
I think Jon is going to come out. Cyril's going to come out, and he's going to be moving a lot. It's going to give Jon some problems in the stand-up as far as the movement and just trying to get to him at times. And I think Cyril's going to have some, success in the stand-up. I think he's going to touch Jon, and I think Jon is going to, after the first round, he's going to really start going towards, I'm going to get in the clinch, and I'm going to foot sweep you and take you down, and I'm going to start pounding a hole in you. And I just don't see that Cyril Gahn has the ability to stop that. When I watch his fight, against Francis Ngannou, Francis picked him up, and dropped him down. But once he was there, he couldn't get away. Mm-hmm. He couldn't stop. And Francis is not known for his, ground and pound. He's not known for his top game. He's known for having power and knocking people out. Jon's positioning on the ground is outstanding. He puts a ton of pressure on guys. His submission game is a lot better than people give him credit for. He's got the long levers, like I'm saying, with his arms, where he can wrap the head at times. He can do a lot of things to cause you problems. He's great at lacing the arm from behind. Look, he just presents problems for guys. And if Gahn is on his back, the fight's going Jon's direction.
Yeah, I look at the heavyweight division. There's not one heavyweight in that division that I think gives him a hard time. And if there is one, it would be Cyril Gahn. That's the only guy I can think of. I look at Stipe also, but Stipe's been out for 2 years now.
Stipe's getting older too.
He's older too now. Yeah. So I look at this and I'm like, Tom Aspinall's coming back for an injury, but he also has a long ways to go. He's
not ready.
He's not ready. That's like a Jon Jones type fight. It's almost like a Mayweather Canelo. Let me get him while he's young.
Absolutely. If I'm Jon Jones, I say, hey, I'll take Tom Aspinall next. Absolutely.
Yeah. But when I look at that division, there's nobody else in that division I can really see that can give Jon a hard time.
Curtis Blades might.
Oh, never mind. Sorry, you're right. You're absolutely right. I said that a month ago. I said Curtis Blades is probably the only one that I think would give him a really good time. See, Curtis, the guy who gets left.
Boy, he gets left behind.
He gets left behind all the time at every turn. And I just did it myself to him. Damn it. Yeah. I'm a piece of shit.
Well, you brought up the guy that he just beat in Tom Aspinall, so
yeah.
But I think Curtis Blades absolutely presents probably some of the most difficult, problems for Jon to solve.
I would have liked to have seen DC and Jon at heavyweight.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would have been different. I'm just simply saying I would have liked to have seen DC and Jon.
Don't know what would have been.
Yeah, I'm not saying it would. I just think for me and for my own selfish reasons, because I know DC possessed a lot of power at heavyweight. He had some big crack, but then when you see the DC that got older, didn't want to, he put in the work. He just didn't keep the weight under control.
Just wasn't the same.
It wasn't the same. No.
Yeah.
But the DC that fought in Strikeforce, the DC that first came into the UFC,
DC with the first couple fights, absolutely.
Yeah, the first couple fights, yeah. All right, next fight.
Next fight, championship fight, Valentina Shevchenko, who I think both of us kind of think is a good fighter, kind of like her style. Going up against Alexa Grasso, and someone that I know you really enjoy watching, someone that has really come along. And she's really come along as a fighter. She's really improved her wrestling game. She actually, works at taking people to the ground. She was a stand-up fighter completely for a long time. I think she's just up against someone at this point in time she just doesn't match up well with.
I would have to agree. I think that Shevchenko is going to be able to press her to the fence, work on getting that takedown. I think inside the clinch, Shevchenko is the way better fighter. I think Alexa Grasso has definitely gotten a lot better in takedown defense.
Yep.
But I look for Shevchenko to get to the body lock and try to either foot sweep or pull her away from the fence, lift and knee tap her and take her down. Once she gets to the top position,
she's very good at.
She's extremely good at that. And once she gets to that top position, I don't think Alexa Grasso gets up. And she'll continue to do that. Alexa Grasso will take damage on the bottom.
I think the easiest way to compare this fight, if you're looking at it, take a look at what happened with Valentina when she fought Jessica Andrade. That's going to be your blueprint for this fight right here. She's not going to stand with Grasso. She knows where Alexa is strong. She knows where her strength is. And if there's one thing that you got to give Valentina, fight IQ-wise, she's sharp. And she will take the fight where her opponent is weakest. And that, with Alexa, that's going to be the ground.
No, I agree. And, look, that's not to say that she can't stand with her.
No.
She can stand with her and she can take a chance.
Yeah.
But what that does, though,
chance.
is that allows her to make Alexa believe she's going to stand with her to open up the takedown a little bit more. She has that ability to stand enough to get Alexa involved in like a firefight. And once she does that, then the takedowns come a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Great fight. Jeff Neal, tons of power against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think this is a great matchup. I love Jeff Neal and his stand-up and the power that he has. But he's up against a guy that is damn good, very controlling, outstanding wrestling, especially with the body locks and being able to bring someone down when they normally are able to use the fence. He's very sharp at bouncing guys off of the fence, using little taps, knee taps to the inside and outside, sweeps. Just the guy's got a whole freaking toolbox full of different ways that he takes the fight to the ground. And then once he's in the top position, he normally keeps it. So it's going to be a tough fight, between Neal. But Neal's got the power. He can hurt anybody.
Yeah, he's got power. I just think that Rakhmonov is going to be able to use the reach, use the movement, really try to get Jeff Neal to overcommit. And in that ability, he's going to be able to get a takedown. Once he gets to that top position, he's going to be able to out-grapple, out-control, and be able to land some damage within those scrambles, too, on the ground. And I think that's really where it's going to lie. Look, this is also, I look at Rakhmonov, this is a real test for him. His fights before, they were tough.
Yeah,
but this is his first real test in the UFC.
And this is a guy that can knock him out with one shot.
Yeah.
Jeff Neal's got that kind of power.
Do you feel like because Jeff Neal's coming off of a good win, do you feel like he's kind of being thrown to the wolves in this situation?
No, I don't think so. I think this is, one of those fights where you look and you say, hey, we've put you against certain guys, and sometimes you've really looked impressive, and you had those big fights. What his last fight was against Luque, wasn't it? And he stopped Luque.
Yeah, he did.
And that's impressive because a whole lot of guys have been in there against Vicente and not able to do that. And then you take a look like his fight with Wonder Boy, a little bit different. right? So it's a matter of, this is a fight. We're giving you a guy that's undefeated. We're giving you a guy that can wrestle. You normally want to keep the fight on the feet. You have an advantage there. Well, let's see if you can actually use that advantage. Let's see if you can keep this guy from being able to take you down. You're going to get your win. And if this guy does take you down, guess what? He's probably going to get the win.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad matchup for him.
Next.
Well, we got Mateus Gamrot against Jalen Turner. I love this matchup. And it's a matter of, we know how good Gamrot is. We know how good his wrestling is. We know what kind of controlling fighter is. He's exciting too. He'll stay on the feet. I don't think he can actually stay on the feet long with Jalen Turner. Jalen, you're talking about a guy that's definitely going to have a size advantage as far as the reach, the height. 6'3", probably. It's going to have about a 4 to 5 inch reach advantage, and he's got a speed advantage. The question is, can he stop what Mateus Gamrot does? I don't know.
I like Jalen Turner.
How can you not?
That height, though, I think is going to work against him.
It might.
The ability for Gamrot to get in on the wrestling, get in on the legs, scoop the leg, hit the snatch single, lift the leg, whatever it is. Yeah. Now, he will have a little bit of a hard time getting him down, I think, because of the height. Getting to the legs will be easy, but unless he scoops under the ass and lifts, that single leg lift or those flares and all that stuff that you're going to need to get there, it's going to be difficult, because lifting him on a single leg, he's still going to be on his toes.
Right, he's going to be dragging that foot, man.
He'll have he's got good balance. It's not going to be as easy as we think, but I think after you get one, the second, the third, and the fourth start coming a little bit easier. And then Jalen Turner starts worrying about the takedown and doesn't let his hands go, doesn't let his kicks go. And then that opens up the ability for Gamrot to start landing strikes to go along with his wrestling. And that's kind of where you end up in nowhere, like in no man's land, going, shit, what do? Do I strike, or do I focus on stopping the takedown? Because now I'm getting hit, and now I'm getting taken down. Like, you need to figure out what you want to do. I think Jalen's just got to stay on his bike a little bit, use a lot of lateral movement, never let his feet set directly in front of Gamrot. So he's got to step to the side, throw the punch or the kick, and then move right away. He can't afford to be lazy with his kick returns. Got to kick, bring it back, and move. And if he can do that, and he's sneaky. He's real sneaky with his stand-up. Real sneaky. The elbows and the knees and the clinch against the fence, if Turner can press Gamrot to the fence, that might be something we take a look at. Because the height of pressing him, hanging on Gamrot's head, and then as well as lifting the underhook to be able to knee the liver, the kidneys there on that side, liver on that side, then that right there, I think, could potentially be something where he can get some work done, maybe land up to the head as well because of the height difference. It does make for a good fight, but I could see this fight also being very one-sided.
I tell you what, Jalen Turner's really turned the corner, and his time at Ruka, with Jason Perillo, he's gotten so much better in the stand-up. Mm-hmm. He utilizes a jab now that he never did in the past. He's got the ability to create problems for Gamrot. It's a stylistic matchup, and that's what makes good fights, is having those kind of stylistic challenges. I would definitely say Gamrot is the favorite, but I would not be surprised if Jalen Turner comes away with a win.
Interesting. Next.
Well, you got it. Bo Nickel coming in, making his UFC debut against Jamie Pickett. Now the question is, who's being thrown to the lions? Is it Bo Nickel or is it Jamie Pickett?
I mean, look, the hype is there.
I don't think it's Bo.
The hype is there, John. And we all know that Bo can perform under the bright lights. He's done it in wrestling. He's done it his whole life. Yeah, his whole life. He's done it. So he's no stranger to being put on the spotlight. And I think that he's going to shine again. We'll see, though, with Jamie Pickett on what he can possess. I think the way to beat Bo Nickel right now is to catch him in some sort of transition in the grappling department. Yeah. In the grappling. Really? In the grappling, not the wrestling. You're going to have to catch him with his head in the wrong position. You're going to have to catch him with the...
I just don't see that happening.
I could see I don't see that with Jamie Pickett. I'm saying, though, for these fighters that will be facing him coming up, a lot of guys with leg locks, a lot of guys with guillotines, a lot of guys that have good positioning.
It took Gordon Ryan about 20 minutes to finally catch him in a leg lock after putting a whole bunch of leg locks on him.
Interesting.
You know?
I also think
the guy is not a bad.
No,
I'm not saying wrestler. He's
No.
a fantastic wrestler. He's not a bad grappler either.
yeah, that's true as well. I think, but in a fight though, you're gonna have to catch him in transition. That's what I said. So it's to catch him in transition. If his head's in the wrong spot, latch onto that guillotine, arming guillotine potentially. Overcommitting, could be able to come underneath on a leg lock position and catch him in a reverse heel hook somewhere along there, or and just hit him with a flying knee, something along those. Like, you're gonna have to catch him, I think, off guard if you're looking to get this finish against him. So we'll see if Jamie Pickett can do that.
I think Jamie Pickett's best route to victory: keep it on the feet and get into a firefight with him, make him stand and bang, make him take shots. That's the way to beat him. But Cody Garbrandt against Trevin Jones.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good fight. It's not an easy fight for Cody Garbrandt. I look at that and I go, obviously he was once a champion, had an undefeated record for a while there, and then a couple of losses against TJ kind of switched things around for him. And the real question is, how much has his chin changed? Because it's been touched quite a few times now, and he's gotten knocked out, and that's the real question. If you were going to ask who should win this fight, it's Cody Garbrandt. But anymore, I'm not too sure that's the easiest pick, because he has been hurt multiple times.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit the other day.
Yeah,
and I like Cody a lot. He just
Cody.
He has a tendency to get into a firefight. Like, he has good wrestling. He's got good top position. Sorry, excuse me. He doesn't use that. And so it's not always about standing and banging and using your speed. Sometimes it's about just elevating your fight IQ and using all the tools you have in your toolbox. He doesn't always do that, and I feel like that's what kind of costs him sometimes in these positions.
He did it so well when he won the title against Dominic Cruz. He fought so smart. He was so controlled. He didn't fall into the traps.
Yeah.
He did so many good things, and you look and you go, you got to get back to that guy.
Yeah. I guess we'll see. I mean, this is a good opportunity for him to get back on track. I mean, he fought a very good, very smart fight against Rafael Sansa. And then after that fight, then he went back into fighting the way that he was fighting before, and trying to win by his balls. And
but also going down to 125 wasn't.
Yeah, that was a very bad decision. That was a bad decision. All right, next.
Derek Brunson against Duplessis. That's an interesting fight. Brunson is the better wrestler by far, but he does tend to get tired, and Duplessis, we've seen, doesn't really get tired, man. Even when he's put out a ton of energy, he still comes. So I think Derek, if he's going to get a win, he needs to get the win within the first round and a half, or be where he's controlling the pace of the fight. Get the takedown, use his good ground and pound, and he's got great ground and pound, great positioning. Use that, make Duplessis work, and then just go back to the drawing board and continue to do it round after round, and he'll get the win.
Yeah, I think the game plan's always been with Derek Brunson is to get the takedowns, control the top position, and slow the pace down and control, and that's it. And also, all he's got to do is win the first 2 rounds. And I know this is a shitty way of thinking. If you're a fan at home and you're listening to this, you're going, great, I got to watch the third round. It's going to be boring. That's bullshit and boring. But with Derek Brunson, after you win the first 2 rounds, it seems like he just tends to go, he wants to put it in cruise control. Now, some of that could be fatigue, and some of that could just be mentality. Look, I've already won the first 2 rounds. Let's just survive the third, and then I've won this fight. That's a shitty way of thinking, but I get the vibe and the feeling sometimes when I watch him fight. Like, that's the way he thinks. Like, I've got the first 2 rounds in the bag. Let's circle, stay away. No. Keep doing what you were doing.
Yeah.
You were winning. And then, he doesn't sometimes do that. And so,
True.
Then it costs him the fight. But I look at it, I think he'll be able to get the takedowns early. It's whether he can continue to get the takedowns as the fight goes on, or if he has to get the takedowns as the fight goes on. But he's got to also be a little more active from the top position.
Yeah.
Because he has a tendency sometimes to not want to gas out, so he doesn't become as active as he should be or could be.
True
he
point.
also is getting a little bit older. That's another issue. So when you're trying to be an active fighter from the top position, continue to get to takedowns and do the ground and pound, all that shit adds up. And mentally, you also know that you in the past have been known to get tired. Yeah. That wears on you. All of these things build up in your mind, John. And it's something he's going to be dealing with on that night. So Duplessis with the power, Duplessis with the ability and strong to be able to keep this thing on the feet and make Derek Brunson work, especially in that third round. Don't think this fight is over. If you're a fan at home, don't think it's over if Duplessis has lost the first 2 rounds by being stuck on the bottom, because he still has that power in the end. And Derek Brunson has been known to lose fights in the end because of the fatigue and
That's true.
And backpedaling or whatever it is. So look for this to be a fun fight, especially as it goes on. Yeah. Next.
We've got Viviana Araujo against Amanda Ribas, which is a good matchup. I look forward to it. I enjoy watching Ribas fight. I think she's
so do I, John.
Technically good. She looks good. No, technically, she got a good ground game. She's got a good stand up. She's just a gamer. So, Julian Marquez against Marc-Andre Barrion, which is really an interesting fight, I think, because Barrio is tough as hell, just a brawler. Same with the Cuban Missile Crisis there in Julian Marquez. But the question with Marquez, he was with Glory MMA. He's not going to have James Krause in his corner, obviously. It's going to be an interesting fight. He better get it done quick because Barrio just keeps coming.
All right, well, hey, that's going to wrap up our UFC talk, unless there's any other early prelims you want to talk about, John.
Nah,
I think we're good.
You got the young upstart in Ian Gary coming against Keenan Song. Gary's just been looking great. Very young, very talented.
Dave, you got any news for us before we wrap into that, though? Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Well, so I was just going to say, we've been doing these rankings, and this one on paper looks like it could be a solid
it's a good
prelims
card
and main card.
Yeah.
So what would you, if you were looking at this on paper, like what are you kind of thinking rating wise?
It's a 9.
Ooh.
It's a 9. Let's be honest. You got a heavyweight championship with a guy that is one of the greatest fighters ever going against a guy that's a stud and gone. That's a great heavyweight championship fight. You're getting one of the best female fighters of all time in Valentina Shevchenko. You got Jalen Turner against Gamrot. That's awesome. You get to see Bo Nickel make his debut. You got Cody Garbrandt coming there. You got Derek Brunson. Look, you got a lot of great fights here.
I agree with John that he's got a lot of great fights here. But I also look at this card, and I also think that you have potentially a lot of one-sided fights. So I'm going to rate it like John. I'm going to say 9.5.
Ooh,
but I could also see
you went ahead of me. See, look at that. Whoa.
Yeah, I could. But I also look at Jon Jones could be a very one-sided fight. Shevchenko could be a very one-sided fight. Jeff Neal and Rakhmonov could kind of be a one-sided fight. I look for it to be a little bit closer than people think.
Yeah.
Gamrot Turner, I think if Gamrot starts to get the takedown early, it's going to be a very one-sided fight. Okay. I can also see it being a quick knockout by Turner.
Yep.
So that would actually throw some flavor into it. I think Bo Nickel, a one-sided fight.
Yep, I agree.
And then you go to Cody Garbrandt, and that could be back and forth. It could be a throwdown fight. Could be.
Could be the Garbrandt uses his power, fights smart, knocks him out.
Yep, could be. But then, like I said, you get in, and then Brunson, it depends on if he gets the takedowns, able to control the top position.
That's not going to be a one-sided fight.
You don't think so?
No.
I mean, you can see 3 rounds of Derek Brunson on top.
You can. Oh,
yeah,
no doubt.
You can.
Look at that. That's the route to victory for Derek Brunson.
Yeah, and then I look at Hebus and Araujo, that could be a really good fight back and forth. They're both really good.
Yeah.
So I look at, I'm going to get 9.5. I'm going to go with John. But when I go back and grade this card, it could be, if I give it a bad score, it'll be because it is a bunch of one-sided fights. And that's it. Like whether you have the talent on there or not, it could be that way. But if they're back and forth battles, Shit. I'm going to stick with my 9.5 probably.
There you go.
But
I like
all right. What you got else for us? You got some news for us there, Dave?
The only thing I wanted your thoughts on was this removal of Darren Till from the active roster. Just want to get your reaction there before we get anything. You know, Darren's not said anything yet, so just before anything comes out, do you have any early thoughts here? And then we'll roll on our guest.
I look at Darren Till, and he's still a good fighter. He did not look great against Duplessis. He got mauled a little bit in one round. Then he came back in the next and then went right back to the being underneath. And anytime that Darren Till is on the bottom, it's not a good night for Darren Till. He is a very sharp stand-up fighter. He's got, a ton of skill. And you take a look at the guys that, he's been losing to, all of them, good fighters, because, he had Robert Whitaker, Christ, one of the best middleweights there is. Yeah, he lost to Duplessis and he lost to Derek Brunson, who are now fighting each other. But he's just in that mode right now that he's got to get back to who he was, get back to being that guy that, comes out, puts it on people in the stand-up, and continue to learn your wrestling and get better and better, which he has in some ways. And then in other ways, you look at something, he got taken down by Duplessis and you go, that should never have happened.
Yeah.
So I think whether he fights in the UFC or not, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't watch Darren because he fights in the UFC. I watch Darren Till because I enjoy watching Darren Till fight. So wherever he's at, I'm going to watch him fight. And if he ends up, staying away from the UFC, great. If he goes back, great. I just enjoy watching the guy fight.
I want to say a bunch of positive things.
Okay.
I feel that he's lost his way. He lost his way, whether it's training, whether it's his diet and nutrition. I feel like what happened at 170,
yeah,
it forced him to train because he had to get his weight down.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Now at 85, he didn't have to, and we've seen just he's just been dismantled. He hasn't been the same fighter. We don't see the energy. We don't see the excitement. I don't see that in his face. You look at, the picture that they had of him when they cut him, the picture that was being shown. It's him sitting down after his last fight. And he looks smooth. There's no body tone. There's his belly's kind of not fit. Like he's not in the shape that a professional fighter should look. And I'm not saying that all fighters need to look that way. But I'm saying I remember the Darren Till from before.
You're saying he does.
Darren does. Darren needs to look. Darren at 170 was never ripped
lean.
And shredded. Was never like six-pack.
No, he was
abs,
lean.
But he was lean. You could tell that he put in the work. His facial features, his shoulders, everything was sculpted. He was not shredded like beyond means, but he was fit. And when he went to 85, he lost that. And then now the losses, he's got self-doubt. And like you said, he's trying to get back to where he was at one point. I think also, too, as him getting older, it's going to be, I don't think there's an option for him to go back to 70 now.
But he's not old. He's only 30 years old.
I know, John. I get it. But then he's going to have to, at that age, at 30, he can make 70 again if he wants. I think he's a better fighter at 170.
I agree.
That, or if he's going to stay at 185, he needs to get on a real program with real coaches, someone that really controls what he does, a nutrition program and if he's
going to go to 170, he needs to get on a nutritional program too.
But at 185, he's going to have to put a little bit more weight on in terms of muscle and build because he's getting out strength in some stuff. He's getting out position. Like it seems like he's gotten, I don't want to say worse, but he hasn't evolved to the level he should have over these last couple of years. He's still the same fighter that he was when he first came in, but without the actual cardio now. Like he looked exhausted after that first round. He couldn't even stop a takedown where the guy grabbed his ankle. He was like, all he had to do is just turn his heel and step out. He didn't have the wherewithal to do it, which means that's mental fatigue. That's just not unacceptable for a professional athlete. And I love watching Darren Till fight.
Yeah,
I love it. But the last couple fights that I've seen him fight, I didn't like watching that fight.
I agree with you. But if you take a look, I mean, on his record, he's got wins against guys like, Wonderboy Thompson. Mm-hmm. Close fight, but he got the win. he's had some great fights.
Yeah.
It's just, lately, like you're saying, a lot of it is it's the confidence. I don't think he has the confidence now that he once had, and that's a big difference.
That's true. It does make a huge difference. Is there anything else, Dave? Give us another one. Give us one more.
I actually don't. I don't have because we only prepared a certain amount. Because we have the guest. But
yes.
Why don't you give us your OnlyFans rundown, Josh, before we roll over them?
Yeah. My OnlyFans, really? My OnlyFans?
It's your OnlyFans, dude.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Look, John, I say this all the time. I'm going to continue to say it. Is that we have sat down with the OnlyFans executives, and we have really tried to make a push for their new sports department. And in leading the way, we are working with OnlyFans. So why don't you guys head over to our OnlyFans page. It's onlyfans.com/weighing in. We are actually doing a feature next week with OnlyFans with Michael Venom Page. And so when that feature is done, but John and I will be doing a quick interview with them next week. And that will be something that they feature with OnlyFans. And that's a huge deal for us. And to bring more spotlight to the athletes that they have on their rosters. So they have MVP. They've got AJ McKee. They've got Brett Primus. They've got Luke Rockhold. They've got Chris Cyborg. They are really Charles Oliveira they just worked with. So they are working on building up platforms for these athletes to go to and to engage more with their fans. And that's why it's called OnlyFans. So that's why we have joined with them and talked to the executives on how we can help build their brand in the sports department. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure that we are working on this.
No one here is getting naked, thank God.
I mean, don't tease me with a good time. Shit.
Well, Josh, you and I have been talking about weight cutting. We talked about a lot on a recent episode of the Weighing In podcast, and it is my distinct honor to bring in somebody that I know is the best executive officer when it comes to regulation in any state athletic commission, a guy that I was lucky enough to work with, the guy that everyone looks up to, my man Andy Foster from the state of California. Andy, how you doing?
I'm good, John. Thank you for having me.
Oh, hell, thank you for coming on, because we got a lot to talk about, because there's so many misconceptions. There's all these ideas. Josh has got a ton of ideas, and I want you to just systematically destroy them for him, okay? But no, I really want to talk about what's going on in the state of California, in the state of mixed martial arts, combative sports completely, everything that's going on, and what you're doing to try to take that next step forward. So
we don't have enough time to talk about what's going on in the state of California, my friends.
Now, hold on, we're not talking about the state of California and all bureaucracy. We're just talking about combative sports.
We're talking about sports. Gotcha. I love it. What do you got for us, Andy? Tell us what. There's so many different things we want to talk about. I mean, I could sit here and I could probably have you on for 2 or 3 hours, but I know we're going to try to not minimize your time. We're going to try to make sure that we get the best stuff out of you.
Maximize his time.
Maximize as much out of it. But in terms of the weight cutting, we've seen issues, we've seen problems with athletes, and you guys have made some changes, because you guys did that meeting that we were a part of. John was there, I was there, Forrest Griffin was there, some other athletes were there. But we had talked, what is the reasoning behind not having same-day weigh-ins?
Well, I mean, there's several, Josh, but I think probably the most practical reason is the promoters will not go along with it. Okay, that's for one reason. Now that's a practical reason. That's not necessarily the commission reason, because there used to be same-day weigh-ins in boxing years ago. But if we did do that, Josh, because weight cutting's become so prevalent in the culture, I would say that most folks wouldn't cut that much. But then there'd be a few that would cut an extreme amount still and try to get into the cage severely dehydrated. And then there's going to be some bad outcomes. That would be that's what I believe will happen if we were to allow that. And most of the time it'd be fine, but then we'd have bad outcomes on some of the more so than we have now, when we allow 30 hours, 36 hours for rehydration.
So if we go ahead, John.
No, that's
Go
right.
ahead.
Go ahead.
if we go with the same day weigh-ins, and I'm going to stay with this only for another question or two, but if we go with the same day weigh-ins, but then we also regulate it, say, down the line, say like we're talking as soon as the bout agreement is signed, that they have to send you video or something of them weighing in, whether it's at home or whether the promotion.
Oh, yeah, they won't cheat. You're right.
Or whether the promotion needs to send. They already send drug test people there. Why not send someone there to take video of them making their weight, and you have you have a certain guideline of which they have to be within at the sign of the bout agreement. And then you do it again, say 2 weeks out, and then you do it again at the week of the event. It's a process. I know it is a process. I know it's a lot to work with, but making sure that the fighter's safety is number one, which is what I know the commissions are supposed to be doing. Okay. And making sure that they do that. Hey, once the bout agreement is signed, we check their weight, and then we do it again, say 4 weeks out, and then we do it again 2 weeks before, and then we do it again the week of.
Look, Josh,
it's a lot.
It's a lot, and the World Boxing Council does this for some of their bigger title fights. They do like a 30, a 14, and a 7, and I think in abstract that makes some degree of sense, but in practicalities, the commission doesn't have the bandwidth to do that for all of the athletes. So then you have to. We've got enough data where when we get a card now, we've got weigh-in data. We know which athletes on that particular card have a history of doing this. Okay, and we do a lot of these weight checks. We call them up randomly, put them on a scale. If we send Sean Wells or one of the inspectors out to get a drug test on them, sometimes they get weighed then. We have scales that we can take around. But Josh, weight cutting, look, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. I'd love to be able to weigh people all the way up. But part of this also has to have buy-in from the promotion. You have to have buy-in from the matchmakers. Because I can sit here and I can talk to the matchmakers and tell them, look, this person should not be fighting at 170. And oh, please, Andy, come on. They've got a contract signed. They're professionals. I've heard lots of reasons why they should do this. So it's a balancing act. And a lot of times I'll just move the fight up. I mean, John, you've seen all the catch weights that are happening in California. I'm sure. I mean, you've had to have seen, you had to have saw that. I assure you that's not by design of some matchmaker wanting to make catch weights. Okay. So, I mean, we had like one the other day that was 137 for a title at Georgia's show or whatever down now. So these things happen. But Josh, it's a very complicated issue because you're balancing. If you do one thing with weight cutting, there can be consequences on the other side and I'm trying to basically balance a real bad model that has came across and we're trying to make it somewhat better. And by giving them more time to rehydrate, that is a safer method by giving people more time to rehydrate than going into the cage totally dehydrated and getting hit in the head.
So, Annie, let's talk about, you have an extensive weight cutting, I don't know how to say it, but extensive studies and the material and all of the information that you have collected from the state of California. Let's just put it out. The state of California does by far the most boxing and MMA of any state there is. You double what everyone else does. So you have all of these fights. You've gotten all of this data and information. You've got a program going through the University of Harvard about weight cutting and things that are happening. Where is it that you see that there could possibly be a change that would be for the better?
Well, I mean, John, I know it's going to sound punitive, but at the next commission meeting, that 15% cutoff is going to, I feel like that will be voted for. Commission's already voted for it once. I think they'll vote for it again, and then I'll promulgate that with the Office of Administrative Law, which means you show up on Friday for a weigh-in and you weigh 170. The next day, you can't be more than 195 and a half. Now, John, that is a reasonable expectation. If you tell the public you're a welterweight, you should be able to be below 195 and a half pounds. You should be able to be below that. The problem is, and you saw our data, we've got quite a few fighters that aren't making that. And the state of California is not going to regulate that once we pass that regulation. It's not going to be up to Andy Foster's discretion anymore, because I get put in a box and I have to kill these fights. And, I do it. It's my job. But it's not a pleasant experience sitting there. If everybody knows the rules, you cannot be more than 15% above where you were the day before. That's a reasonable expectation, and people will begin to follow the rules. And that's the first step, John, I feel like, to putting a line in the sand.
Well, that's exactly what, when we were at the meeting, that I suggested. I had suggested not exceeding the next weight class above. I mean, you guys are giving them more at 15%. You're giving more than that next weight class above in most cases. So why is it not just considered to be the next weight class above?
Josh, really, to be honest with you, that came from we took notes at that thing. This was partially your idea that it came from. That's where we got this. The problem is, and John saw the information.
Oh my God. We just blew that one, didn't we?
Yeah, I've got a big head, Andy. Now I want to just say thank you very much for letting everyone know that I actually came up with a great idea. Thank you very much.
Not that great, because here's your problem.
Go ahead. Let's hear
Andy,
it.
did you not try to do 10% before, and it just created nothing but problems for people as far as getting the suspensions and what promoters want and everything, and that's why you're now moving to that 15%?
Well, John, what we had before was 10%. 10% is still the magic number. That's where we're hoping fighters don't exceed. And we flag them above 10%. We send them weight notices and all these different things. But when we initially come up with this plan, I did not want it to be a punitive thing, because this thing's for the health and safety of the athletes. So it's like I'm having to argue with athletes to be safe, and I didn't want to be punitive about it. So, but John, you saw the numbers. I sent them to you today. I have a problem. We have a problem here in California. And if we have it, I'm sure the other states have it as well. There are a lot of fighters, not a lot, but there's enough to where 15% is such a large amount, and we've got people exceeding that you've got to start somewhere. And Dr. Wallace and the medical committee's idea is, let's start at 15%, have that for a while, and slowly try to move it down, slowly over time. But, the 15%'s a line in the sand. It's the first time it's done. And Josh, it's entirely reasonable. A welterweight should be able to be below 195 and a half the day of the fight.
Yeah. I know that you guys have had several conversations with the promotions, but if you were to say, hey, look, we're going to start with the 15% and then start working our way down to potentially 10, but let's talk about potentially adding just one. I think the standard right now is just one weight class. It's say 175, 165, 175, and then it goes 10 pounds, right? Now just don't exceed that 10 pounds. And then as the fighters get better, John, I know you're laughing right now, but just hear me out.
Go ahead.
And I understand he's talking about moving it from 15 and working his way down. And I'm talking about over time.
You realize you're
as well.
talking about less than 10%.
I am.
You're
yes,
talking
I am.
about less than 10% by far.
I am. I do.
And right now,
I do understand that.
Now, at 15%, they have about 3% of the fighters that are over that. And at 10%, you have about 20% of the fighters over it.
So if you would let me finish. So if you continue to go on, right, and you're saying, Andy, over time, that you're hoping that these fighters will eventually start taking care of their bodies and then realize that they just got to go to the next weight class up. So now if you actually implement 10-pound weight classes all the way up to, say, 195 or 180, keep it at 185, 195. If you do that, then those fighters don't have to worry about cutting as much weight, because they will eventually put themselves into a box of, say, 185, 175, 165, because they understand that it actually is hindering my performance, and I can fight with these guys at 165. I can fight with these guys at 175. You're going to split a little bit of those guys, obviously, but if you had these conversations because I know John tells me all the time, the weight class is already there. 165 and 175 is there. For the health and the safety of the fighters, let's talk to these promotions and say, hey, this is the best way also to go along with the weight cuts to make sure that our fighters are safe. And if they're not understanding, then that puts a lot more of the burden back on them instead of putting it on the commissions for having to do so much regulation. I know you guys are trying. It's obvious. I've been in the meetings, but has that not been a conversation with them?
It's hard, Josh. Look, it's a great idea. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but I have to have promoter buy-in to do this.
Yeah,
the promoters have got to want, and when I say the promoters, I'm specifically talking about the matchmakers. Okay, I think that's the important piece of this. The matchmakers have got to want to fight. And look, I don't even want to put it on the matchmakers, guys, because it's not really. They're being told by the fighters, "Oh yeah, I mean, I can make 155, and the guy's walking at 205 right now." They're being told these things, and that's why John, you saw the data I sent. I mean, I've got all this data. When we get one of these fighters, we kind of know, and then we see what weight class based on where the promoter submits the card, where they're trying to fight them at. And the first thing I'll do to the staff is I'll say, "Okay, Lee, you go ahead, Tricia. We need to wait on this one, and this one." And I haven't really saw, John, what you're talking about, like with the gaming of the scale. Not saying it could not happen, because it absolutely could, especially if you give the fighter a chance to video it. What I mean is, like, it's been my experience just when we do these web things that they haven't cheated on our videos that I can tell yet, because they're about that same weight when we weigh them a week or two out, when we see them when they show up for the fight week. But they absolutely could be cheated, so that's something to consider as well.
Well, even at one time, you were considering using, specific gravity tests and different hydration tests, similar to what ONE FC came up with. And then you went into the whole thing where you realized it could be cheated, and it could be cheated fairly easily.
John, I've bought so many specific gravity tests for the commission, and we used them over the years, and those things are, look, I mean, I don't want to call them they're worthless, but
they're worthless.
Go ahead, you can call them worthless.
They're worthless,
they are.
Andy.
Well, the problem
as soon as I water load, that thing becomes absolutely worthless.
Yeah, I mean, like, what is it on the specific gravity? I'm doing it off of memory here, but like
2.5.
1.00, I think, is water. Okay, and anything 1.03 is incredibly dehydrated. But what happens, John and Josh, is the fighters have drank so much water between the weigh-in and the fight that when we test them the next day, they're peeing close to pure water because they put so much water back in their system, hence the tremendous weight gain. And if you try to run specific gravity testing at the weigh-in, you're just not even going to be able to get a sample. I mean, forget that.
Yeah. But what I was getting at though was the week of, because I know when we showed to events, you guys have started doing where you weigh them the week, like as soon as they arrive, the promotional weigh of them, and they'll submit the weights to the commission, and the commission understands where they're at. So then they have a good understanding of how much weight they really need to cut upon arrival. But in a lot of cases, the fighters that you've been talking about that are on the watch list, those fighters start cutting Thursday, Friday before. Yeah. They even show up in wherever they're at in California. They show up in any venue they're at in California. They're cutting weight Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They're cutting 2-3 pounds at a time, and they're not trying to rush it. So them showing up to check their weight, it's almost like you want to catch them. I shouldn't say the word catch. You want to get a good idea of where they're really at before they're depleted. So then you have a good idea of where you need to focus your energy on with them for safety. And I look at the ideas of what can we do? And the only thing, John, and Andy, that I can come up with is having a weight class every 10 pounds and not allowing those fighters to exceed it. And I know the promotions are giving some pushback on this because the sport was founded with obviously 55, 70, 85, and so on. But adding that extra weight class at 65 and then moving 70 to 75, it really does. If the commissions can go along and try and say, hey, to these promotions, for the fighter's safety, we
Doesn't
need to
matter.
make it. And that's where we're relying on this, John. And this, we got to put a little bit more back on the promotions and not put all the focus on the commissions, like as if it's the commission's fault for not regulating this.
I'm going to say this because Andy's not. Okay, one of the things that you have to consider, Josh, and no matter what,
I'm getting ganged up on over here, Andy. Come on,
this is not. Every athletic commission is a business unto itself. Absolutely. Nevada is self-funding. Okay, meaning that the money that they pull in is how they pay their people. Okay, California is a little bit different, but all of these athletic commissions, they're almost in business against each other, because as soon as Andy goes and puts very strict regulations against, weights and does what you're saying, says, what, I'm going to have this where you can't weigh more than the next weight class.
Yeah.
Okay, guess what happens?
They stop coming to
They stop coming to his business.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that becomes it's counterproductive. It just does. You can't just arbitrarily put all these regulations, and yes, you're the safest one, and you're the one that no one does fights at because of it. True.
Well, I mean, John, obviously the commission, I know you were using it thing. Obviously the commission is a state agency. The commission's a government agency, and I know what you mean. But what you're talking about is the business would go away. The business,
Yes.
we wouldn't have private businesses wanting to do business with the state of California if I became too strict with the regulations. And kind of the balancing act that I'm trying to figure out, and I've not done it yet. I keep trying to put different things into the formula, is the balance between obviously the protection of the public and protection of these fighters is paramount, but you've also got to throw in the what's good for the sport in general, and it's a balancing act. And I think this 15% line in the sand, John, if we have a line, because right now we do not have one anywhere, okay? And it's such a big line that I think that a lot of the promotions would be supportive of this particular line, because at least there is a line.
What about the other regulatory bodies? Because that's important that you get them all in line with that same percentage, so that line in the sand extends no matter where the fighter goes.
And I'm working on that, John. I've got to do it here first. But I'm also having talks with the ABC Medical Committee, which I'm part of. And I think they're all, in fact, there was the doctors thought they should be lower than 15%. They were fine with 15%, but a lot of them were saying, well, and then we showed them the data and they're like, whoa, wow, So, because you saw the data, we've got 20% of the fighters fighting over 10% right now.
Yep.
And that's with all of our weight checks and all of the things we do and all of the precautions. And imagine how many, this is a rampant problem across the sports. To me, it's the biggest problem in mixed martial arts is how do you fix this? Because I think if you fix this, you fix a lot of other things that go along with combat sports.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you look at it, though, also where you can say that these fighters, I don't even know how to say this. So, if you were to have like an edge, I don't even know how to say it, John. How do you get these fighters into an education where they should be able to see the results? Guys like Masvidal, guys like Dos Anjos, guys like even Benson Henderson that went up to 70. They didn't have to kill themselves. They fought at 70. They had good performances. Shit, Masvidal's fought for the title twice. He's had runs where he could have potentially been the world champ at the weight class above. He spent most of his career killing himself to get at 155. Is there just no way of educating these fighters and letting them know that you potentially could have better performances at a higher weight class if you just decided to do your nutrition properly and to put the weight on properly, build muscle properly, do all of these things without killing yourself? Spend more time maybe educating these guys instead of trying to combat them.
How do you get them? How do you get them,
John?
Well,
that's what the commission is for.
No, because the commission is not in charge of any fighter unless they have that fighter licensed. They can't do anything with them unless they're licensed, and then they can have some impact.
so when they are licensed, sending them, I don't know, sending them video footage or video or something along on an education system, like sending them some sort of, I don't know, education that shows them the effects, not just to their body, but also the performances they potentially could have if they didn't cut this way.
Well,
look, right now I'm playing devil's advocate, obviously, because the two of you guys are ganged up on me, and I'm okay. I'm ready for this. Bring it on.
I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Josh, I think you have a lot of wonderful ideas. I mean, it's good ideas. It's just, whether we can implement them or not. I mean, from what you're talking about with the education, we've got videos out. I mean, they don't have that many views because I don't think the fighters are that interested in watching our videos, but we have them. They're out there.
Yeah.
If I made watching the video mandatory, I don't know if they'd really watch it, even if I told them to. Do you know what I mean? And
you got to come to California and take a test. Make sure that you watch the video.
Nah, I get it. I understand. Look, I really am. I'm extremely interested in this conversation based on that. I didn't cut a lot of weight, and then I see the next generation of fighters that have come after me, and they are extremely big. I mean, like I remember when I first fought, when I fought Yves Edwards, Joe Rogan's on air going, Josh Thompson's probably one of the biggest lightweights, if not the biggest lightweight I've ever seen. You look at me now inside that cage. I know I'm a little withered now because I'm older, but even towards the end of my career, I was not
featherweights were bigger than you.
Yes, I had guys that were featherweights that were bigger than me. And these guys are enormous. I mean, they are extremely big and they are cutting a ton of weight. I'm just trying to find ways to check their weight maybe early in the camp to see exactly where they're at, check their weight upon arrival, and then obviously they can't exceed, once they do weigh in, they can't exceed, I say, the next weight class above, but I can understand the 15%. That's a great idea. I think the 15% is a good starting point. It absolutely is. But where do you go from there after that? Are you giving it a year or two? Are you seeing where the progression goes and how successful it is?
Well,
how do you...
Josh, I have a theory, John and John and Josh, I have a theory that if we put this 15% in place, right now, John, you've got the data. I think I'm losing 3% of the MMA athletes above 15%. Okay.
Yep, about 2% of boxers, 3% of MMA.
I think I'll lose 0% of both groups. Okay. And here's why I think that. I think the matchmakers will be more cautious. That's the word I'll use, to match fighters in weight classes that they're concerned about. And I think the fighters will be more cautious earlier in their camp to make sure that they meet the California number when they come back, because you guys both know that they're not going to want to affect their performance on fight day. They're going to want to try to win. And John, you saw the numbers. You saw it's my experience that this is not always true. It's my experience that the more money that's involved, the more weight fighters are willing to cut. That's been my experience by watching it.
Well, you're saying 3% of the MMA fighters are the ones that are exceeding the 15%.
Correct.
What is keeping these promotions from just not booking those fighters in your state when they fight?
Because they're really good fighters.
But Josh, it's an interesting question because I've had promotions tell me, "Oh, we're not gonna come to California because this guy's a huge weight cutter." I've actually had that conversation before, but they said they still came. They just used that fighter in a different place. But that's only happened once or twice. Most of the time, it's just they know that they're coming to California and they're going to have to. Because John, you were the referee, I think, that night that I canceled one of the Bellator fights at Pachanga. Were you the referee, or were you commentating at that time? Was it Pachanga?
Oh no. I was refereeing then.
Yeah, you remember that? I canceled the fight.
Yeah, but that was because the person was, oh my God, they came in, I want to say 27 pounds over what they weighed in at.
Yeah, 19%.
Yeah.
And he had 3 warnings up to that point. And the other problem of that, I'm going on memory, John, but you probably remember too. It was like 55 on Thursday at the weigh-in, he was like 187 or something, or 188, some big number on Friday, and his opponent had only gained to like 164. So like you had a massive swing between the two of them. And
where were you when I fought Pat Healy? He weighed in at 155. He weighed 192 by the time I fought him. I needed you in my corner for that one. That guy was heavy. Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, but you agree? I mean, guys, that's dangerous. You agree? I mean, when there's that much weight?
Well, you truthfully don't have guys fighting in the same weight category. Yeah, they weighed in at it, but now they're not. And that's the problem, and that's the whole thing with weight cutting. It should be that you're fighting somewhere close to an individual that is close to the same size. And sometimes we get ones that guys are, some guys and some girls are just really good at cutting that weight, and they put on a lot of weight.
Well, when you look at like the promotion like One, they do the hydration test, and I've said this repeatedly because we had hydration tests in college wrestling, and they're pointless. They can be cheated very easily. You can do the static ways also, which also can be cheated. There's so many different ways to just cheat the system when it comes to making weight. Yeah. What kind of change, like when because they're talking about coming to Colorado. How does that change in terms of like for them to come over to Colorado, and then the weight cutting? Do they still need to implement their own system, or because they don't weigh what they actually weigh in at? So how do you make those changes? Like in terms of, he says he's fighting at flyweight. Well, that guy's not a flyweight fighter if he's weighing in at 135. Do you just change the name of the category, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand.
When you take a look at, and it's not Andy State, and that's why he's not sure. One FC is going to be going to Colorado. Colorado has agreed to certain rules and stuff. But when you look at, he's asking, have you talked to anybody from there, or do you know, are they going to use what is the unified rules for weights, or are they going to use what One uses? Because they'll say a flyweight can weigh in at 136 pounds.
Oh yeah, I don't know what, I mean, who knows? I mean, Colorado's letting them have knees to the head on the ground from what I understand. So they're probably letting them use all their rules, I would imagine. We're not gonna be having knees to the head on the ground over here anytime soon.
Gotcha. There is something off of the weight cutting. John, do you have any other questions about the weight cutting? You guys are in conversations about fighters' pensions.
I was going to talk about that. Okay. You have legislation that's been put in place that in the state of California, you have had pensions for boxers, and that's based upon boxers having so many rounds that they do in the state of California throughout their career, they could get a pension. Well, now you've introduced, and it's in legislation that they can have the same thing for MMA fighters. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, Assemblymember Matt Haney from San Francisco sponsoring Assembly Bill 1136. It was introduced. It essentially creates an MMA pension fund like the boxers already have. The boxers have had this benefit in California since 1982. It was revamped in 96. Mixed martial arts have been regulated since 2006 in California, but they've never had this benefit. The commissioners wanted to get this done. This was part of their strategic plan. So I'm trying to I tried hard to get it done, and Mr. Haney's willing to sponsor it. And we're going to try to move it through the legislature. I want to be very clear, John, this doesn't take general fund money. It doesn't take taxpayer money. This is coming from commission assessments on the promoters. The fighters pay nothing into this, but I want to be also clear. It's not like life-changing money, John. I mean, the average since 2012, when I was appointed in 2012, I think we've given out 171 of these pensions. And it's like an average of $19,000 one time. They get it one time. Okay. So it's not like some kind of vast sum of money, but at the same time, nobody else is doing it. That's for one thing. Nobody the fighters don't have to pay a penny to it. And, the taxpayers don't have to pay a penny to it. So I don't really see
too
much
win-win.
of a downside.
But then what you're taking though, you're saying 19,000 for the boxing, but boxing has been known to pay more than MMA top, the MMA promotions. So, but there's also, you tend to find more fighters on an MMA card, say 15 fights on a card, all the way up to 22 fights, as John and I know sometimes, is that you'll have 22 fights on a card. Are you charging a flat fee for those promotions that have to be paid into this pension, or is it per fight, or is it per fighter?
Well, I mean, so the legislation creates the fund. The commission has to draft the regulations, but there are emergency regulations per the way the current legislation would be drafted. So if it passed, the commission could adopt emergency regulations. So what that means, John and Josh, is bills take effect on January 1st of the year. So if they run it in 2023 and it passes and the governor was to sign it, then on January 1st, it's effective. Then the commission has to draft regulations. So since they're emergency regulations, the plan would become effective around July 1st of 2024. And at that point, then we're active, and it's like a flat. We're talking about $1 a ticket with no cap. So, Josh, to go back to your point, the cap in boxing is $4,600. There's talking about no cap in mixed martial arts. So let's say like a Bellator that was down at if they have like 10,000 people, 10,000 tickets sold, that'd be $10,000 to the fund. And UFC comes, more money to the fund. Smaller shows, more money to the fund. And since California runs so many, and the vesting requirements are I won't say they're ridiculously high. They're not. But Josh, this is a lot of fights to fight in California.
Yeah.
Vesting requirements 12 or 13 fights. Okay, you fight 13 times in California, you're a California fighter. Everybody knows you came up in the California system. This is a California program. But whether you live here or not, if you fight here 13 times, or that's it's somewhere between 36 and 40 rounds scheduled. So it's something like 12 or 13 fights. That's a lot of fights. That's the current framework.
I meet that criteria pretty easily.
You would, absolutely.
So you're saying that it doesn't really fall back on the promotion then? It just falls back on how many tickets they sell, and you take a percentage, say it's $1 per ticket.
Correct. I mean, that's the way the framework's set up. Now, we have some other ideas that I don't want to talk about specifically, but there's some other revenue generating ideas that could significantly increase that income generation that we'll be rolling out kind of in tandem with this legislation, or that's kind of the idea. Because the idea is to try to do something for the fighters. And it looks like California is gonna try to get there first.
Is this also towards like say you have amateur fights? Does it also count towards the amateur fights as well?
No.
Okay, not the fighters. I'm saying, but the events that they say there's an amateur fight or an amateur event. Is that dollar also being taken from that ticket to go in towards this pension? That's what I meant.
It's a good question. We haven't decided that particular point yet.
Got it. Okay.
I think one of the most important things to think about with this, though, is you're sitting there talking about the amount of money, and I go back to certain boxers that I know that have gotten that pension, and some of them, Chicanito was, Gennaro Hernandez was, on death's door with cancer and was able to at least get some money for his family, and he got quite a good sizable chunk because he did a lot of his career in California and stuff like that. But this is, Josh, we talk about all the time. Sometimes you got to give up your old life to start your new.
Yes.
And this could allow someone to go to trade school. It could allow them to go to, online college and get their degree. And that way they can start their life anew from there. It's something that no one gave you anything, did they?
No. I was actually wondering if this could be retroactive.
No, it's not. You're not grandfathered.
Can I grandfather this in? But no, John, you made up a good point. Andy, this is definitely something that, in terms of what California does, this is definitely something that I feel like John was saying is good for the fighters that after you're done, it gives you a little fallback for you to either start, like you said, a trade school, for you to be able to, establish yourself, either pay your rent until you're able to get picked up by a police force or a firefighter academy or something along those lines that could get you into a career-long job, something you can do for the next 30, 40 years to take care of your family. It's very important because fighters are lost. Athletes, period. Just period. Athletes are lost after they get done with their career. They believe it's going to last forever, and it doesn't. And Andy, I mean, have you come across that? I would imagine you've come across this a lot of times where you pass fighters at events and they're lost. Fighters that you'd seen fight several times, and there was nothing to fall back on.
When I do come across it, and Josh, you know this, John, you know this. There's a certain need for these fighters to have these combat sports, especially earlier in their lives. I mean, they like it, they need it. Josh, I know you still train. John, you still train. I still train, but we don't. I'm talking about when you're younger, there's a need for this. There's a real people found a lot of benefit in combat sports. And I think this is just really the state's kind of the effort of the commission and the Assembly Member Haney and the Assembly to just basically acknowledge, hey, and there's something after this, and kind of we're looking after or looking out for their future in a little bit. I mean, it's not. I don't want to make it more than it is, but it is something that we're trying to do.
I think it's a great thing, and I really hope it passes. And I like your other ideas. I can't say what they are, but they're good ideas, and they can put a lot more money in that fund. And I hope those come through. But here's the one that I got to ask you about, because a lot of people don't know that you used to fight. You were a competitive fighter. You fought in some big fights, and you were great at getting an armbar. I mean, but I want to talk about the fact that you've done a fantastic job of taking, the state of California and your crew, and you've really incorporated what a lot of people wanted to see, but you've done it in a way that's been logical and smart about the officials that you have working for you. Because you have some of, old time officials that have been around for a long time, like Herb Dean, and, he's absolutely old as dirt, just like me. And that's awesome. But the new people that you're bringing in, you've brought in a lot of guys that were ex-fighters. You got guys like Frank Trigg refereeing. You got guys like Chris Lieben who are judging for you. Rafael Davis is doing both. You got Felicia O, who was the first female black belt here in America under Jean-Jacques Machado. You've really reached out in trying to get a huge knowledge base of both MMA, jiu-jitsu, all these things with the people that are being the officials for your fights.
Yeah. I mean, John, it's really that's really kind of a simple thing. And, you and I talked about this 10 years ago, and this was one of the things that I was planning on doing. And I finally got there. Josh, you fought so many times. I think you get this 100%, but if you're going to be judged or you're going to be officiated, I would like for you and for the fighters to be judged and officiated by other martial artists, by your peers. Okay. I want you to be judged, not people you're currently competing against. That would not be correct, but people that have competed in the past and now they've moved on. This sport should be oversaw by those people. This sport should be regulated and looked at by those people, or at least some of them. They should be making the decisions on who wins fights if they're trained and they know what to look for. They should be making the decisions on when to stop fights because they've been there. They've got their head pounded. They know how much. And there's also that, it's hard to teach this, John, but what is that thing where, a fighter wants out, but they want to get out honorable and they're looking to the referee to help them? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I've got a lot of good guys that I've brought on. And like you call them, they're the crew. And I almost call this, John, my second generation crew, because my first generation crew, thankfully, has gotten so good that they're judging all over the world now, as you probably have saw. So yeah, I've got looking to do some good things with Chris Lieben. Felicia's been coming along. We're trying to move her along. Rafael Davis has been doing good. I got Jonathan Romero down south. Frank Trigg, he just did the title fight in Bellator. One of them. Obviously, Herb, it's the way I do it in California. My top referee gets the big fights, and Herb will get all the big fights he wants if he wants to do them with me. But I got a lot of good guys. Mike Beltran has been.
Jason
Herzog. He's got the co-main event coming up at Bellator. Jason Herzog's an excellent referee. I mean, just
one of the best.
I've got a lot of high level like Felicia. Elliot Kelly's a high level practitioner. Wade Vieira has got a long background in all of these sports. So it's just that's my thoughts. I guess that's a long-winded thing that I believe this sport should be officiated by other martial artists.
Well, in doing that though, do you think that's going to help take away some of the criticism that obviously the judging's been getting lately? And I don't think it is, and that's why I'm bringing this up. Is you hear the commentary, and it's not John, but other promotions. You hear their commentary. You hear the promotion or the promoters complain about the judging, and where does that leave you though in terms of like how do you jump in and affect and talk to your judges and your refs and their position and their jobs when obviously there's a lot of criticism coming towards your employees? Well,
John, I think you will agree to this, and you tell me if you don't, okay? Because I'd like to hear your perspective. I've not asked you this, but I feel like MMA officiating, specifically judging, is better than it ever has been right now. Okay, I mean it was pretty bad 20 years ago.
Yes, it was.
And I feel like
Josh knows that.
Yes.
I feel like it's gotten better. Now, is there room for improvement? Sure. But, you've got a situation, John, and John, I don't know how to fix this. Okay. I really don't. But I feel like the consistency in the eights are pretty good right now compared to what they were 10 years ago. You agree with that?
I do. Overall, I mean, every now and then we'll get a fight that I go, I do not agree with the judges in the way they go with it. But most of the ones, what we have is when we have people say, oh, it was a robbery. No, it was a close fight.
Yeah. And
the one thing that I really, unless you sit in that seat, you'll have no idea. But Andy, Josh knows because, I've talked to him and he has actually sat there in one location and watched the fight. It's completely different than people realize. Mm-hmm. And it's way different when it's your name going on a card and it actually counts. It's one of the hardest things to do. It is incredibly difficult when you have a close fight.
Well, Andy, this is the thing. When you hear people say it's a robbery or they say that person should have won the fight or anything along those lines, those are the same people that are sitting in a room filled with other people as they talk, they check their phone, they drink their beer. They're not actually watching the fight. And so when I hear these robberies, and it's even hard for commentary to say who won the fight. You want to know why? Because they're talking about the fight. And as you're watching the fight, you're actually picking one side more than the other side because that fighter landed the harder shot. Now all of a sudden you're watching that fighter. Where the judge is watching the fight as in its entirety. It's watching one fighter land. Now boom, the other fighter lands. Boom. Now I'm going tit for tat. Which one came out with the better outcome? The commentary doesn't always do that. The crowd is obviously not always paying attention, and the people at home on a couch, they're definitely not paying attention. They got kids running in the background. You got friends cheering. You got people eating pizza. You've got it all going on. To say that someone was robbed, it's got to be a blatant robbery. But I've also found that and this was very public as of recently, it tends to be the same judges that have inconsistencies. And how do you deal with something like that?
Well, there's a couple of my school of thought on this is before you get to sit in the seat, what have you done to sit in the seat to assess other martial artists? That's for one. Then when you get there, how are your scores? I mean, are you consistent or whatever? But if you get a bad score, Josh, you need to sit that judge back and take them back and protect them. You certainly don't want to put them back out there because people are going to make mistakes. They're only human, okay? And the media has gotten pretty good about pouncing on whoever's making a bad decision. Now, if it's the same judge and you're getting this over and over and over, then we probably have a problem with that particular judge. But if it's an anomalous type thing where it happens once every so often and they're judging often, like I mean, John, how often does Sal D'Amato score? How often does Derek Cleary score? If they have a bad score every now and then, I mean, the public should be able to live with that because they're not out there trying to mess up. Nobody's trying to mess up.
No, they're not.
But if it happens all the time, but notice when, what Sal had a little bit of a kind of a weird score, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And like he went down to the co-main or down to the undercard for a few fights and got, it's sort of like baseball players in a way. They get in slumps a little bit and then they'll come right back. And Sal D'Amato is the most experienced judge in the world. If I can use him on my fights, I'm bringing him out. I'm bringing Derek out. I'm bringing these people out. But I've got Mike Bell. I've got Ron. I've got all these guys here in California that are developing and have developed but you've just got to, Josh, to answer your question, if you've got a judge who's making bad decisions consistently, you probably need to maybe look at somebody else.
But the progress of what you described it, I'm not sure if people at home caught it or people listening, is that you put them sometimes down to the undercard. You say, hey, let's get you through a couple of these fights, see where you're at, see where your score's at. And if it's good, then we'll just go ahead and start bumping you back up. It's like putting you down in the minors. Say you're in a slump. Okay. We put you back down into the minors and we bring you back up to the pros, after you get back on track. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to suggest the undercard of a big Bellator or a big UFC is all those fights are important, but you get what I'm saying. You understand.
Yes, I do.
But if you have a judge that you hear make the comment of, well, you need to understand, we only have 5 to 10, maybe 15 seconds to make that determination on what I just watched and who I'm going to say won that round. Doesn't that tell you that judge is not watching that the way he's supposed to?
Well, I mean, John,
shouldn't a judge at any moment that fight stops know which way he's going to be given that score?
Absolutely. I mean, what if you have a partial round? You've got to know where the fight's at that
That's my point
in time. I mean, that doesn't happen very often, but if that does happen, I want my judge to know, but rather than flip a coin in their mind.
I agree.
Oh, okay.
Josh knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah, John over here taking jabs. But look, I'm gonna go back to the weight cut. Now you're talking about the 15%. And you guys are going to vote on this. Am I correct?
Yes.
And then when is that vote happening?
March the 6th.
March the 6th. Now, if this thing gets approved, what are the next steps in terms of implementing it?
I've got to run the regulation. It'll take me a little while. You'll see it. You'll see it the earliest probably fourth quarter of 2023.
Okay. And then moving from there, and the promotions that you've talked to, whether it's UFC, Bellator, whatever, PFL, Rise, and whatever it is, they all understand what you're doing, or have you had conversations with all these promotions about this?
I've had conversations with UFC and with Bellator.
Okay.
I haven't. Risen's not licensed here, and
yeah,
PFL is, but I hadn't really talked to them. They don't run shows out here that often.
Okay. And then once that implements, and you're saying that you need to figure out all the regulations that this will happen with them, and then once it does implement, you're saying by fourth quarter, which is what, November, end of October, November, December?
Yeah, that'd be the earliest. Probably Josh, probably more likely the first quarter of 2024, but it'll be the third or the fourth quarter of 23 or the first quarter of 24.
Now, I don't want to look too far ahead, and I understand, but like what would be ideally in your next step in terms of time frame Are you giving this a certain amount of time? Because like you said, you would like to get this down to say closer to 10%, but are we talking 4, 6, 8 years down the line, or to see how the progress goes from year to year?
Well, once I get it, and once I get data, then I'm going to try to get other states to adopt it, other major states. New York's a pretty good prospect, and Nevada's a pretty good prospect, but probably like something like a New York, because Kim Sumbler likes to look at our weight cutting regulations, and she's been pretty proactive over there. And she's got Todd Anderson running her MMA program, so that it's been pretty. I'd like to, maybe look to them to see if they'd, And so if you can get another big state to do it, then suddenly you can have conversations about moving it down. But I don't want to get too far ahead. I just want to stop the 15%. I want to stop the bleeding. Because I believe 100% that if we put a line in the sand, we won't have anybody cross it. I don't think we'll have anybody cross it. Maybe right at the beginning they cross it, because people will not really believe we're going to cancel a fight, even though we're going to tell them. Once it happens once or twice, I don't think you'll have that ever happen again. And then suddenly that'll become the standard line in the sand. And keep in mind, John and Josh, this will happen for boxing as well. So I think once that happens, the sanctioning organizations will probably be pretty agreeable to adopt this. I mean, IBF has their weight cutting rules, much like you said, Josh, with the 10 pounds. Mauricio with the WBC has his much like you said with the weight checks and all that. So I think all these different organizations will be pretty agreeable to this, and we'll just have to move it from there and see what happens.
Have you guys thought about, and have you guys realized that sometimes the fighters, knowing that they're going to exceed that 15, is going to probably cut weight the day of?
It's been a concern, but Josh, if you cut weight, I mean, if you've put on 15%, more than, think about it, from 170 to 195 and a half, we're giving you 25 and a half pounds. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to get a note. You're going to get a note. You may get shifted to the next weight class if you do that, but your fight's not going to get canceled. But if you have to cut weight to make 195 and a half after weighing in 170, I'd say the doctors are probably going to be able to pick up on that, Josh. They're probably they probably will.
Got it.
I'd say the biggest problem with it's going to be your performance is probably not going to be what it could have been.
There you go.
Yeah, and you got a chance of losing the fight based upon you trying to cut weight the day of. But we do have people that do.
Yeah.
You should. Yeah, I think most of us realize though also that if you are cutting weight, you're only going to be cutting about probably 2 to 3 pounds at the max at 15%. I mean, if you're given a 15% allowance, like you said, getting up to 195 and a half, if they're up to 200, they're cutting. Do the math, John, because I'm not very good at it. But you know what I mean. They're cutting 4 pounds, 3.5, 4 pounds, and that's not as much as they just did the day before. But it will eventually affect their performance, even if it's a little bit of weight.
In the end.
Yeah, a little bit of dry mouth, a little bit of muscle fatigue, those type of things will affect your performance. But having that extra weight, that's going to be the hard part, I think, in the long run for these fighters. They're going to have to really get themselves on a nutrition program, spend the money on the between camps. And we had Yaroslav Amosov. When he fought, but the first time he fought Logan Storley, he said, I got so fat out of shape, in between camps. And that's the problem with a lot of these younger MMA fighters. Look at guys like Paddy Pimblett. I mean, he walks around 200, fights at 55. Yep. That's a problem. That's an issue. Now, he doesn't maybe put the weight all back on because he does look pretty lean when he fights. But that's a concern, I think, for every promoter should be a concern. Like, will they make the weight first when they get so big and out of shape between camps? And then once they do make the weight, how much will it affect their performance to where, am I getting my money's worth as a promoter? Am I getting what I paid for a performance? I want that knockdown, drag out available fighter, someone that has the energy to go into the 3rd round or the 5th round. Am I getting that? And so that's where I feel like if you can have these conversations with the promoter and you say, hey, I do like the 15%, Andy, and I think it's definitely a great idea. I think it's going to be the segue into getting it lower, but the conversation down the line, I really believe, is to have this. Let's start off with 15, and as fighters get used to it, start talking about getting it lower. But then on top of it is implementing that extra 1 weight class or that extra 2 weight classes. So now they don't have to worry about being so losing so much weight because there's another weight class available and ready to them for them. If I could have fought at 65, I probably would have fought at 65. I hated getting to 55, and I didn't cut a ton of weight. 22 pounds, 20 pounds at the max. At the max, 20 pounds. Very rarely it was like 17, 18 pounds. But I never exceeded that weight class either. But like I said, that goes with educating the fighter in terms of not putting on more weight than what you're used to training at, because that does also affect your performance. That's where the education comes in. And then later on down the line, explaining to the promotions that if we had extra weight classes, these fighters would not be hurting themselves as much. I look at the game plan moving forward. That's all I wanted to know, what your thoughts were on the game plan moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, everything you said's kind of correct. I mean, that's what I envision moving forward is, I mean, these weight classes are already available to the promoters if they want to use them. But moving forward, like ideally what I would like to see is we get this thing a little bit lower, and promoters start correctly matching these people with people that they have that are close to the same weight. So we don't have fighters who on Monday show up at 185, cut to 155, and then on Saturday when we weigh them again, they're 1 pound away from each other, and they're 183 pounds each, or 183 and 184. And that's what happens. This is like a really dumb thing that we have happening here is you have people basically the same size in the cage most of the time. The problem where it gets dangerous is one guy didn't get the memo and another guy's 25 pounds heavier than him. That's where it gets dangerous. And I actually canceled a boxing match the other day with a situation like that. But it does happen from time to time, and that's why it's important to be vigilant. And Josh, what you said is correct. A while ago, I'm having to do a lot of regulation looking at this. This takes a lot of effort to try to track everybody's weights. And it'd be good if we could just get people kind of in the right weight, but I do have to look at it because it's a problem.
Andy, let me ask you.
I don't envy you at all for having to do all this legwork. I gotta be honest. Us fighters, we're stubborn. We're always the most argumentative when it comes to things that we think is best for our career and our health, when in reality, we don't really know.
Boom. Andy, let me ask you this, because back at UFC 199, that was the first time that you implemented the early weigh-in, where we have an early weigh-in in the morning and then a ceremonial weigh-in later on, but the fighters get more time to rehydrate. That was always looked at as that was what was better for their health. Now, let's say it's 8 years down the road, 7-8 years down the road, and you've seen everything. Was that the right decision to make? Do you think it's been effective?
I think it did. I think it did what we needed it to do as far as giving the fighters more time to rehydrate, John. I mean, from a purely optics standpoint and a safety standpoint. So it's not just optics. I'm talking about safety and optics. What is it we had, John, we have these guys dehydrate all day, wait till 4 or 5, and we bring them out in front of 4,000 people and weigh them in, and they can barely walk. Do you know what I'm talking about? You remember that, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this gets rid of that. Where at least when they're out there doing their face-offs, they're healthy, they feel good, they're able to, we're not having to basically transport people from weigh-ins as much as we used to. And this is totally anecdotal, John. You and Josh could comment on this, but it seems like the guys feel better. It seems like they're fighting better. It seems like they feel better because they've had more time to rehydrate. It seems that way.
Well, we just had recently the Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski fight, which is number 1 against number 2 pound for pound. Both incredible fighters, both champions. But if you look, we did a side-by-side of Islam Makhachev, and you got to figure that when he fought Charles Oliveira in Abu Dhabi, he had that full basic 36 or 38 hours of rehydration. When he fought Alexander Volkanovski, that was not there, and he was cut down to less than 24 hours, and you could see the difference in his body just taking a look at him. The way he came in, the way his body looked, he looked smoother. And it's all because of that rehydration time that he was used to. In that fight against Volkanovski, he did not get that same amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, so what I would prefer, John and Josh, is I would prefer to have the extra time to rehydrate and all that, but also be matched more appropriately to the weight class, so they're not having to do these massive weight cuts, so that the rehydration is not so extreme. That's ideally, and I mean, you go to our database, John, on the national database, we got flags on so many people. I mean, commissions call us from all around the world about these flags, and so we're having some effect. We're having some impact. We just got to do more. I feel like we're an island out here, a big island. California's a big island, but we focus on this particular area because I think it's I mean, and plus we got a lot of exposure. There's a lot of exposure. We get a lot of fights, so I've got to pay attention to it. It's the biggest problem in mixed martial arts, and it's probably the second biggest problem in boxing.
If you were to say, because you've already brought up New York, in terms of which states would probably follow suit, obviously down the line, maybe after a year of data that was brought in, who would you say would be the next couple states that would be willing to potentially jump on board?
I don't know. I bet my home state of Georgia do it. Utah would do it. I bet Scott Bowler would do it. He's been interested in this subject. But I don't know. I'd have to think on that, Josh. It's a good question, though.
Because, like, if you look, like, has been for years going to Chicago at least probably once a year. Then UFCs tend to go there, and then Florida's had a lot of action as of lately because of COVID. I mean, those are two states that you would like to see, that I'd like to see this probably implemented in. But what's the relationship so much in terms of you think them following suit here shortly after?
Yeah, I kind of doubt. I don't want to speak for Florida, so I don't know. I know that California. I know that I'm focused on this particular subject, and I don't know about the other states. I do know that Kim Sumbler cares about this issue because she talked to me about it. In New York.
Got it. Okay.
Well, Andy, I want to tell you, thank you so much for your time. I know we've taken about an hour of your time, so I just want to say, hey, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for explaining things to people. And thank you for being a guy that is always looking for a way to make both boxing and MMA better. So you the man. Thank you.
I want to make sure that there's one last thing.
I can't hear. Can you hear anything? I can't hear anything.
I'm not letting you get away with this, Andy. I'm not letting you get away with this. Hey, John, that was a headbutt, by the way.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. Hey, John, I just want to say this really, really quickly about the Muhammad Ali stamp. Chairman Villegas is working on with others at the Ali Center. He's trying to work with different politicians to get Muhammad Ali a postage stamp. So I just wanted to mention that quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that would be special, and hopefully it comes about. There's all kinds of red tape to go through for those things, but Muhammad Ali getting his own postage stamp is something that needs to happen because he was a huge figure, not only in the United States, but in the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, both of you guys. Thank you.
Well, Andy, I want to say thank you because honestly, you were always in contact with me talking about whether it was my fights, my performances, or rules, and any questions I ever had. You always reach back out to me when I reached out to you. You're actually the only commissioner I've ever actually had a really good relationship and talked with in terms of response, and not just that because I'm the commissioner and this is what I'm telling you to do. I appreciate that. And, even when we had the headbutt situation, we had talked several times extensively over how to handle it or how we should go through it. But, I think as a fighter, those are things that are important to have a relationship with your commissioner, understand, what the rules are, understand how to go about things. And I appreciate you so much for those type of things. Thank you.
want to thank Andy Foster for coming on our show. Great interview. Gave a lot of good, insight into the way you have to look at regulation and what you're going to do. Josh coming up with actually some good questions. And they're ones that needed to be answered. No, it's because it really is. People need to hear that stuff. But the big part about, weight cutting, Josh, and, we've said it before, there's all kinds of ideas, but there's no easy answers. Nothing's easy.
Nothing can be easy when the promotions have a lot of the say in what goes on.
That's
Because if they don't like what the commissions are doing, they just won't take their event there. And then in that process, then basically the states are not getting the funding they need, or they're not making the money they need. They are a business like anything else, and it takes time or it doesn't take time, but it takes money to finance that type of business, is to have commissioners, to have judges, to have refs, to have people that work with the fighters in the back. All of those things cost money. And if the promotions don't come, then they can't have those people on staff. And that's where the problem lies. So
that's right. And you can't afford training for them, and all kinds of things just snowball. So tough. But thank you very much to Executive Officer Andy Foster for coming on the show. We appreciate it. And I hope you guys all enjoy listening to what he had to say. For Josh Thompson and me, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Weighing In podcast, and we will see you